Thank everybody for being here, not only in person, but online. We've got a great crowd gathered online and more joining as we speak. Getting to this point, we've had an LCI class, but we'd like to begin our first program of the summit by welcoming Deanna Acklin, who's going to be presenting the Bicycle Friendly Driver Program. So welcome, Deanna.
All right, great to see everybody here. All right, we're going to start by, I'm just going to create a picture for you. All right, so try to envision this. Think of a mother of 5 back in 1970s. Okay, this particular year, this mom is a single mom now and has 2 children left at home, the ages of 12 and 5. The family vehicle breaks down. There really isn't money to pay for the repairs for this vehicle, and there just won't be for a long time. So she starts walking to the bus station, taking the bus to work, and has another walk to make it to her destination after that. They walk to the grocery store, they walk to the pharmacy. One grocery store is about 1 mile away, pharmacy is about 2 miles away. McDonald's is about a half a mile away. The oldest child, being 12, is in school, but the youngest one isn't quite school age yet. So she stays with a neighbor. But there are times when mom has to take the youngest child with her to some of these errands. So think of little 5-year-old feet walking. This is in Florida. If anyone's familiar with Florida, Tampa, Florida. Okay, the outskirts of Tampa, Florida. Brutal heat, brutal temperatures. Making these trips by foot. The child is miserable, mom's miserable. Luckily, the little girl earlier that year learned how to ride a bike for the first time, and she's really good at it, and she loves riding her bike. So mom got this idea. The neighbor has a bicycle that never, ever gets used. So mom asked, hey, can I use your bike? Because she's thinking, well, if we can make some of these trips on our bike and not have to walk, this will be better for everyone. The little girl will be happier. They won't spend so much time out in the sun. The groceries aren't going to spoil. This is going to be a win for everyone. So she asked, the neighbor says, yeah, absolutely, take the bike. So up until that point, the little girl had only ridden within her apartment complex. So mom starts going a little further and going to some of the adjacent roads that go into the neighborhood. And of course, the little girl's happy. She's like, yeah, as long as I'm on my bike, just don't make me walk anywhere. So they finally get to the point, she's confident enough where let's go ahead and make this trip to McDonald's. Then let's make the trip to the grocery store. They're doing great. So they're doing this all the time. The little girl's asking, hey, mom, when are we going to the store again? Because she just wants to ride somewhere other than her neighborhood. And they're doing this successfully. But there was this one day, the little girl just wasn't feeling so good that day. Things were a little off, not really sure what it was. They had to go to the grocery store, which was about 1 mile away. The road that they enter on from their apartment complex, the speed limit's about 35 miles per hour, but you know, it's Tampa, and people are speeding on this road at times. And mom, being 1970s, when they walk against traffic. So when mom and daughter were on the bike, they were biking against traffic. Because mom thought, well, as long as I can see the cars in front of me, I know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing when they're behind me. So this is what we're going to do. And the little girl always followed right behind her mom, never veered off. This one day, though, she wasn't feeling good. So keep that in mind. So as they turned out of the apartment complex, and they're just on this half a mile stretch of road that's completely flat, straight, which is normally they get on it and they're over, but the little girl always feels like it's like 10 miles long. It's really just, you know, a half a mile, but there's nothing really to look at on this road. This one day, she sees this truck past her mom, and she just decides she's just locked in on the front of this truck. Don't know why, but she just focused on it, tunnel vision. So as she's pedaling and she's focused on this truck, she starts dropping further behind her mom. And mom doesn't realize this. So she's pedaling, she's pedaling. The truck gets closer to mom and daughter. The little girl's focused on the front of this truck. What do you think happens? Take a guess. Anybody? What do you think happens at this point in time? So the little girl, because she's looking at the truck, where does she go? She goes where her eyes are looking. And she's panicked for whatever reason, never been panicked before. She's been completely comfortable on the bike, panics, and goes exactly where she was looking in front of this truck. What do you think happened then? Luckily, the truck didn't hit her. It didn't hit her. It was able to stop. You know why? Because this truck was someone local who had seen this mom and daughter walking that same road with both of her daughters before and had seen the two of them pedaling before. And he always slowed down. He made that choice to slow down when he would see them coming. And he noticed when he was coming this particular day that the little girl had dropped behind the mom significantly. And so, sorry, I keep veering out of frame. So everybody that's watching virtually, sorry if I'm going off the stage here. Keeping me focused, thank you. So this guy, he saw that she dropped off, and so he slowed down even more than what he generally did. And when the little girl pulled out in front of him, he just stopped immediately. But because he had slowed down so much, he was able to stop without crashing into her and without anybody crashing into him because the traffic behind him had slowed down in reaction to what he was doing. So then what happens? The little girl panics, freezes, falls over, starts crying. Mom comes over, yelling and crying and hugging her daughter at the same time, just trying to process what happened and thanking the driver of the truck for stopping and not hitting her. The driver of the truck got out of the car and he said, "Ma'am, I see you and your kids all the time. I pass you all the time. You do great." He's like, "I'm amazed at how she can keep up and how she does, and it's wonderful." He's like, "And I saw that she dropped behind you." And the mom was saying, I didn't know she had dropped that far back. And he said, "It's okay." He's like, "That's why I stopped." Well, that little girl, that was me. That was me. I don't know why I did that day, but I wasn't feeling well, and I remember that completely. And there's more to the story. There's an illness there that no one was really aware of at that time, but that would cause me to get sick, especially out in that Florida sun. But that day, I just locked into that truck, and I love riding my bike. And I love riding my bike with my mom. But I could not believe I did that, and I was scared to death. But you know what? The driver of that truck, he's my hero. He is my hero because he cared enough and he was observant enough, kind enough, empathetic enough that no matter where he was going each day that he passed us, he was being mindful of where we were on the roads with him. So, as I continue on with this presentation, and first of all, just thanks for being here, thanks for tuning in, because I want you all to know I'm just delivering information to you to make you more informed about how we can all interact on the roads together better, but you're the heroes. You're the heroes. Who drives a car or a truck here? Who owns an automobile? Yeah, I do. That's a huge responsibility. When we get behind the wheel of a vehicle, there's a huge responsibility for us to always be in the moment, to be paying attention, to not be distracted, to not be angry, to not be in a hurry. We're not, we mess up. Yeah, we have bad days. But I just want you to know, has anyone here ever had an instance with a bicyclist or a pedestrian where you had to react? But raise your hand if you've had those instances, okay? So I'm going to say, hopefully you were able to react in a way that was good for both you and the person that you were on the road with. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you were angry. Maybe you did something to make it more dangerous. That happens too. But what I want you to hear today is that you can be the hero. And if you weren't the hero in that moment, but you will have another opportunity. This will happen again. you'll get to be the hero for somebody. So always think, as we're going through this, how can you be the hero of this situation? Just like that man driving the truck was my hero. I may not have been here today if it wasn't for the fact that he was so cautious and aware of what was going on. Okay, all right, so whose lane is it anyway? Let's move on here. Okay, so we're going to be covering, like I said, I'm going to deliver information. I'm just the information giver. You guys are the heroes. Okay, what you do with this information is up to you. Some of these things you may already know, and some of these things you may be like, great, I was wondering what that was. I was wondering what to do in that situation. And I hope that this empowers you and gives you that confidence to know, okay, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious today and the rest of the days when I'm out driving. Doesn't matter if I'm late to work, that's my own fault. I'm not going to harm somebody else because I'm running behind. All right, so again, what you do with this information is on you, but we're going to focus on being the hero here. Okay, so I asked, how many of you drive a car? How many of you walk around your town and use walking for transportation? Fantastic. How many of you ride a bike? Okay, fantastic. How many of you ride a bus? How many of you drive a bus? You did, yes, but you did drive a bus. Okay, how about rollerblading, scooters? Around town? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're all people. We're alike. Okay, we drive cars, we ride bikes, we walk the same streets together, we're sharing the roads together. We're a community of bicyclists, motorists, pedestrians. These are just a few people who are near and dear to me, and just examples of the different types of bicyclists that you'll see out there. So that top left corner, we see kids on bikes all the time. This happens to be the son of one of our board members, Richie Rozelle. Lives in Asheville, so northwestern North Carolina, and always commuting by bicycle. The top right picture, I had the honor and pleasure of being part of a team of bicyclists that led cross-country bike tours, and the person in the back of that tandem is a visually impaired bicyclist. He rode across country, visually impaired. So people with disabilities have some amazing abilities. All right, and so we're not just thinking about people who live in our community, but we're thinking about people who are visiting our communities too. The bottom left, that's Larissa Thompson. I don't know if any of you all watched the WCCB. Yes, WCCB. So I had the pleasure of doing a bike safety course with Larissa in Charlotte a couple years ago. And she was asking, I want to start riding a bike. How do I do this? How do I get started riding a bike? How do I ride with traffic? What do I need to watch for? And then again, another cyclist with disabilities, but has abilities that far outweigh mine. The person in the bottom right-hand corner can outride me on a bike 6 ways a Sunday. It's amazing. It's amazing what he can do. All right, where'd my clicker go here? Okay, so sharing the road. Okay, so a bicycle is a vehicle, all right? And so what we teach bicyclists is that you are a vehicle and you are to act as such. Follow the same rules of the road as a vehicle would. But don't be mistaken, a bicyclist is not a motor vehicle. Okay, and a bicyclist can't always do the things that a motor vehicle can, but they are expected to obey the rules of the road. Cyclists always do best, again, if they are treated as, from motorists, as another vehicle, and as if they act as a vehicle as well. But again, it's not always possible for them to act as a motor vehicle. Okay, we're going to talk about infrastructure a little bit. Let's see if you guys recognize any of these. Okay, why the infrastructure? So infrastructure offers direction of travel, intersection positioning, and kind of allows us to expect where to see bicyclists. Okay, so the top left, we've got bike boxes. Has anyone seen a bike box before? That top left, awesome. Okay, so where I'm from in northwestern North Carolina, we don't have infrastructure up there in the mountains. We have some share the road signs or a few sharrows here and there. So people who aren't familiar and haven't seen the infrastructure maybe have never seen this kind of paint before on roads. And so if you go visit someone in another city, a big city, they get there, what is this? What do I do? In my car, what does this green box mean? Okay, so this bike box has a green lane that leads up to the front. These are found at intersections. They allow the bicyclist to move to the front of the intersection so that they can be in better position to make their next move. The next picture over is a toucan crossing. Has anybody seen one of those or ridden one of those? Okay, so the idea behind the toucan is that two can cross at the same time. So both a bicyclist and a pedestrian can cross at that intersection. Okay, how about the next one, the sharrows? Has anybody seen the sharrows before? Okay, so the sharrows are lane markings that kind of give a visual reference to both a bicyclist and a motorist. So a bicyclist is kind of a visual reference of where they should be on the road, but they don't have to be there. But also an indicator to a motorist that there may be a bicyclist traveling in this lane here. Okay, so, and we'll get into more specifics later about where a bicyclist can and can't be on the road. And then that last one, the bike signals. Has anybody encountered bike signals before? No, yeah, okay, some people. It can be kind of confusing sometimes for a bicyclist if you've never seen that before, but they're there just to help with, it's usually 3 signal heads, and it just helps to clarify when a bicyclist should enter the intersection, and to kind of help restrict some of those conflicting movements that can happen between a bicyclist and a motorist. Sharrows, also, one great thing about sharrows is they help reduce wrong way cycling. Okay, so the story I told you about my mom and I riding against traffic, absolutely not. Don't do it. You should never do it. It's illegal. But again, back in 1970s, that's what she felt was the safest thing to do, and she never heard anything else of what to do. Okay. More infrastructure. And so in that first picture, we've got directional paint, protected bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, and roundabouts. So the directional paint, you see there, it's kind of like a curved, we've got the green stripes going across there. It kind of guides a bicyclist of where to go, especially in a confusing intersection. It also helps to alert the motorists that there could be a bicyclist coming up on their side right there. Protected bike lanes. So when a stripe isn't enough, they're going to put other things in place. So oftentimes it's the soft ballards there. It could be planters. Sometimes it's actually parked cars, which is not always the best option. But there's something more than just a line painted on the ground to help buffer that space. Then you've got the buffered bike lanes. So then when one line isn't enough, they add additional lines to just create more of a distance between the vehicles and the traffic. And then that last one, the roundabouts. So roundabouts are for all road users. It's been a great asset for road infrastructure, and just kind of helps slow down that process, slow down traffic, but without actually coming to a stop. So sometimes bicyclists will actually enter the roundabout and ride through, and if they're not comfortable, sometimes they will exit before the roundabout and dismount their bike and walk across as a pedestrian. And some more infrastructure. Okay, directional paint. All right, so in this one, the first picture, we've got a bike lane, and basically the painted arrow is just kind of giving guidance to the bicyclist. The bike lane's coming to an end, and this is where you enter the lane at this point in time. But it also helps motorists to see that and to anticipate that there might be a bicyclist entering the lane at that point in time. Shared use pathways. Shared use pathways are for everybody. So they're for pedestrians, bicyclists, people in wheelchairs, rollerbladers. They're for everyone. And so we have, if there's a bicyclist, if you're riding on a shared path, you need to be respectful of the other users of that path. So the pedestrians always have the right of way, and you need to slow and ride at a pace that's safe for everybody that's using that space. And if you have to, come to a complete stop, you need to be ready to do that to make sure that everyone is safe. And then we have contraflow lanes. Has anyone seen the contraflow lanes before or ridden on them? Yeah, so those can be kind of nerve-wracking sometimes. I know a few times I've gotten on a contraflow bike lane, and I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't know if I like this. So the contraflow lane allows you to actually ride against the flow of traffic, like in that bottom picture there. You see that the flow of traffic is coming off to the right there. The bicyclist is going against traffic, but it's clearly indicated in that bike lane that is the bike lane, and that travel can exist in that direction. And then the contraflow at the top, we've got bicyclists going in both directions. So that can be a little nerve-wracking too when you're out there riding. But so as a motorist, driver of a vehicle, it's more important that you are just really slow down. Just be cautious of who's there around you. One thing about the contraflow lanes, they're not always expecting, motorists were not always expecting bicyclists coming on that contraflow lane. So that can cause some issues at times. So be mindful of that. Okay, what's the cause? There's a little bit of local North Carolina data here and some national crash data. So this information is taken from, so there were approximately 248,204 total average crashes from 2013 to 17. Okay, so from that data, approximately 1,000 crashes involved a bicyclist. So in general, when you think of that out of the total number, you want to say, bicycling is fairly safe, to do. So, small percentage of crashes occur, involve a person on a bike. However, bicyclists are the more vulnerable road user, okay? We cannot forget that. So we also like to point out that intersections and driveways, you see there approximately half of those crashes occur at intersections and driveways, are where motorists need to pay the most attention. And that oftentimes it's that wrong way bicycling is the reason for those accidents there. Children, all right, going back. I'm evidence of that. Children, young adults are the most frequent victims. Children are unpredictable. You have to expect that. Children are unpredictable. You never know what they're going to do, especially when you're riding through a neighborhood, riding past driveways, children riding around on their bicycles. They may be on a sidewalk. They might just be riding up and down the driveway. You've got to anticipate that they're going to pull out in front of you. Again, we've got to be the hero. National crash data. 50% of bicyclist motorist crashes are due to motorist errors. Okay, which leads us to the next point of the slide. What's the cause? All right, the takeaway in most crashes is that both could have done something differently most times. That a bicyclist, person on a bike, and a motorist could have done something differently. At the end of the day, it's not about who's getting the ticket, but what can we both do as a motorist, person driving, and someone that's riding a bike? How can we make the road safer and exist together? Again, you got to be the hero. Okay, so let's go into a few situations. Okay, legal or not? What do you think? What's happening here? Anybody? Right, okay, so we have a bicyclist in a bike lane. Do we see any directional paint in that bike lane? Right, not. that bicyclist is going against the flow of traffic. Okay, that is not a legal maneuver for a bicyclist. But just keep in mind, though, those contraflow lanes do exist, all right? And when those exist, it is legal for bicyclists. Okay, common crashes. All right, remember this. This might be a test question. All right, 50% are right-angle crashes. More than half of these involve a bicyclist riding against traffic. All right, so we see we have the bicyclist coming up here, and we have a little bit more detailed diagram right here. Okay, so we have a bicyclist going against traffic, a motor vehicle wanting to make a right-hand turn. The person driving the car, which way are they looking before they turn into the street? Left, right? They're looking at oncoming traffic. They're not expecting a bicyclist to come up from the right side. So this is so dangerous, especially if, say, the bicyclist was riding on the sidewalk and is thinking, well, I'm safe because I'm on the sidewalk, and he's going to enter that intersection and get hit by the motor vehicle because the motor vehicle is not expecting the bicyclist to be there. So, and the bicyclist very well could ride on the sidewalk if he wants to, but that bicyclist has to yield to the traffic at that intersection. So look right. So how can you be the hero in this situation? And again, these may be situations, this could happen, maybe this happens to you 5 or 6 times a week. And you never meet that person on the bicycle, you never meet that pedestrian, but you went out of your way to be extra cautious. You were the hero that day. Heroes come in all forms. And I'm telling you, you are the hero. Because that person, even though it may have been their mistake, maybe they weren't watching, maybe they just, barreled through going against traffic the wrong way. But because you decided to be extra cautious, that person is somebody's son or daughter, brother, sister, mother, father, and they're going to make it back home that day. Because you took the time to be present and to be cautious and go the extra mile because you're driving that vehicle. All right, next one. Okay, scenario 1. Okay, so we have the bicycle traveling eastbound. We'll go right here, okay? On the westbound traffic lane. Okay, again, going against traffic. Motor vehicle made a right turn from the southbound lane into the westbound lane. Can everybody see that okay? The bicyclist was ejected, slammed into the windshield of the motor vehicle, and it shattered the windshield of the car. Okay, what could be done differently? Anybody? Give me a suggestion. What could be done differently? Whether as a motorist or the bicyclist? Educate the bicyclist? Well, what could you do to have prevented that crash from happening? Right, so looking for that person coming up the wrong way of traffic. So bicyclists, okay, first of all, of course, ride with the flow of traffic. That's what they could have done differently, absolutely. Motorists, look at the right, okay, they're talking about that right collision there. Driveways, the intersections, just looking for that user going against traffic. Okay, we're going to talk about taking the lane a little bit. Okay, legal or not? What do you think? We have a traffic circle. Okay, so here we go. Yes, legal. Okay, so do you think that bicyclists should be courteous and ride in a straight line together? Do you think that they're supposed to ride in a straight line? Are they allowed to be side by side like this? Yes, absolutely. What's that? If the bicyclists know each other? Mm-hmm. Well, so here it looks like we've got two side by side and one is in line behind the other. So legally, they're okay, whether they know each other or not. They're not breaking the law. So if a bicyclist tried to overtake another bicyclist in this situation, yeah, absolutely. But that's not what we're seeing right here, though. So they've entered the flow. They decide not to go 3 abreast. They're 2 abreast. And they're following the rules of the road here. But that's a great question. So, and just to keep in mind, too, it's not necessarily easier for motorists to pass bicyclists that are riding in a straight line, or riding in a line. You could have 8 bicyclists in a line. If you had them side by side, 2 abreast, it's going to be easier to pass them because they're going to mimic more of the size of 2 cars there as opposed to 3 to 4 cars length. It's easier to pass, and it's safer. It's safer for the bicyclists when they're 2 abreast like that. A vehicle's not going to try to squeeze past them, but in a traffic circle, a motorist shouldn't be trying to pass them anyway. Okay, so almost on all roads, the riding 2 abreast is perfectly legal. Some municipalities do have a no more than 2 abreast ordinance, and sometimes that's often mistaken for requiring single file riding. Okay, so that's not no more than 2 abreast is not saying you can't ride 2 abreast. But it's always best to try to check the municipal codes from the area for the area that you're riding at. Okay, so why do bicyclists take the lane? Okay, so often it's the safest place for them to be. And we're going to go into why that is in just a moment. Because riding on sidewalks is sometimes illegal and usually unsafe. And again, riding on sidewalks is something that you need to check for each city that you're in as to whether or not it's legal. They take the lane to prevent from being buzzed or sideswiped. Okay, if they take the lane, they're forcing the motorists to change lanes to pass them, as opposed to trying to squeeze past them and an oncoming motorist. Sometimes they take the lane just to trigger the light signal. How many of you all have sat at a light forever just waiting for it to trip on your bicycle? Yeah, so it's they'll go to the middle of the lane at a light. And then they take the lane to prepare for a left-hand turn. Here's another legal or not. What do we think? I see some people nodding yes. I see a thumbs up. Yeah, okay. Legal, yes. So there's nothing happening here that's illegal. So we have one guy that chose to ride on the shoulder on the other side of the white line, and another guy is riding alongside him 2 abreast. That's perfectly legal. Okay, more about why bicyclists take the lane. Okay, oftentimes bicyclists will take the lane if there's a lot of debris. So motorists oftentimes will see a bicyclist and they'll think, gosh, there's a huge shoulder over there for you to ride in. Why aren't you riding in it? Most of the time those shoulders are full with broken glass and debris that just shatters a bike tire. So the bicyclist doesn't have to stay over there. The safest place for them to be is in the lane where it's free of debris. If the lane is too narrow to share, as I was saying before, they'll take the lane. That's often the situation where I'm at up in northwestern North Carolina. We have winding, skinny roads, and you got to take the lane on a lot of those roads because otherwise you will find a vehicle that's going to try to pass you on those winding roads, and before you know it, you have an oncoming vehicle right ahead of you. So they take the lane to become more visible, to increase motorist awareness, and to avoid the door zone, which we'll talk more about later. Okay, scenario 2. We have a bicyclist traveling westbound in the right part of the westbound traffic lane. We have this truck that's coming up behind the bicyclist. Motor vehicle was traveling westbound in the westbound traffic lane. Motor vehicle tried to pass the bicyclist. Okay, there's a bridge there as well. So that narrowing on the sides indicates a bridge there. The truck didn't want to slow down. It's passing the bicyclist on this bridge. Then oncoming eastbound traffic forced the truck back over into the lane, which caused the truck to collide with the bicyclist. What could be done differently? Yeah, so I've heard a lot of great things. So slow down, wait until it's clear to pass. All right? What was that? Yes, right. So, but you know that's not going to happen. And that's why we say that the bicycle is the most vulnerable road user, because when it comes between two vehicles colliding with each other, they're going to take out the bicyclists. Yes, Stephen? Absolutely, right. So we're talking right now what we can do to, as motorists and as bicyclists, to make these situations better. Ultimately, yes, the best situation is that we start designing infrastructure and roads where we can eliminate this kind of questioning, to where we don't have to be the hero every day that we get in our car to drive to work, to go to the store, to do whatever. Yes, absolutely, Stephen. But until all of our cities are up to par and are serving all road users, we've got to continue to do our part and keep advocating like we are, and the reason why you're here, and be that hero. And so we see there oftentimes, have you all ever seen the ghost bikes around in town before, in your town? Or that always signifies where there's been a loss of life of a person on a bicycle. Yes, yeah. So yes, absolutely. So any way that you can advocate in your own city, especially if you know that there's corridors and streets where there are a lot of safety risks and accidents occurring, you can be the advocate in your city. And as he had mentioned, can we get some kind of barrier there? Can we get something that's going to slow the traffic down, that's going to make them more mindful of the other road users? Okay, so as we said, cyclists could have taken the lane. Cyclists taking the lane would have forced that truck to change lanes. And motorists could have waited for a safe and legal place to pass. Okay, door zones. All right, so door zones are areas generally where you have parked cars along sidewalks. These are very popular downtown. In the heart of downtown areas, you'll have this parallel parking here. And bicyclists oftentimes will tend to weave in and out of the parked lanes because they're thinking they're safer that way, and they are trying not to upset the motorists. They're trying to get out of their way, but then they have to go back into traffic. Again, we said at the very beginning, bicyclists fare best when they act as a vehicle. So here, it's best for bicyclists just to stay in the lane, be predictable, but they need to stay at least 5 feet away from those cars. Because if somebody was in that car and opened the door, that bicyclist is going to hit the door. And there's a lot of people that has lost their life being doored by a vehicle. And so it's best for a bicyclist to stay at least 5 feet away. So let's talk about these door zones a little bit more. And here we have just another version of the door zones. And see here we have a bike lane and alongside of car parking areas. Not necessarily the safest place for a bicyclist to be. Do they have to stay in that bike lane? No, absolutely not. Just because there's a bike lane there doesn't mean that they have to stay in that lane. They can take the lane in order to get away until they get out of that parked car area to avoid the door zone. Okay, all right, so door zones. This is the opposite hand trick for motorists. Everybody raise your right hand. Okay, raise your right hand and now reach across your body if you were going to grab the door. Yeah. What just happened with your body position and your head and your face as you reached to your left? Everything turned and looked that way. That's called the Dutch reach. Okay, this is something that you could get into the habit of doing when you park on street, is instead of reaching with your left hand to open the door and not thinking to look to see if there's a bicyclist coming beside you or a pedestrian, a person pushing a stroller, someone in a wheelchair. If you reach with your right hand across your body, that forces you to turn your head and look over your shoulder and get into that habit, and then you'll just automatically do it and look for anyone that's coming. Okay, another common crash, 15% approach turn, left cross, almost half, 49%, result in a serious injury. So we have a vehicle that's going to make a left turn. We have a bicyclist coming through the intersection. Oftentimes, motor vehicles, we underestimate how fast a bicyclist is going. And they'll try to hurry through the intersection and get past and end up colliding with that bicyclist. So if there's oncoming traffic, slow down, stop, wait, turn until the traffic clears. Watch for oncoming bicyclists. Again, speed and distance, especially with e-bikes now. It's hard to tell how fast a bike is coming. Okay, and then also watch for bicyclists that are in the shadow of a vehicle. I've almost been hit many times by being kind of sandwiched in between two different cars in a lane and a car waiting to turn and thinking that he had a gap in the line, and there wasn't. So watch out for that bicyclist in the shadow. Okay, another legal or not. What do you think? We've got a double yellow line, a bicyclist, we've got some motor vehicles. Absolutely. Okay, it is legal. All right, so in the state of North Carolina, where there's a double yellow line, it is safe to pass a bicyclist, the slower moving vehicle, only when it's clear, there's not oncoming traffic, and you have to give 4 feet of distance when you're passing that person. Okay, so you want to treat them as slow moving vehicles. Cross a double line, 4 feet, no oncoming traffic, slow down, wait to pass, and then you wait to return when the bicyclist is in your mirror. Okay, so that was a perfectly legal move. If there was an oncoming vehicle, would that have been legal for the motorist? No, absolutely not. Did you see? I didn't see an oncoming vehicle in there. I saw a truck in front, but if there was an oncoming vehicle, then no, absolutely not. But I think they were just trying to show that there's 2 vehicles passing. Common crashes, another one, is the right hook, overtaking a turn. So you have a bicyclist and a car going in the same direction. The bicyclist is continuing through the intersection. The car wants to make a right turn. So again, it's difficult to judge the pace of the rider. Okay, so again, the bicyclists, when coming to an intersection, they may take the lane to avoid getting hit on that right hook by a motorist. As a motorist, what can we do? You can check for bicyclists coming from behind. You can move into the bike lane once you've noticed that it's clear to make and finish that move for the right-hand turn. And then by all means, and I've seen this and it's happened to me before, I've been overtaken by a motorist to turn in front of me and then almost having to collide with them and having to do a quick turn in order to ensure that I'm not hitting that vehicle. Okay, so we have another legal or not. What do we think? Okay, so we have a vehicle passing a bicyclist. Okay, so legal. So here it's kind of hard to judge whether or not what the distance is between that motorist and the bicyclist. So in the state of North Carolina, the law is you have to give 2 feet of passing clearance. But we all know 2 feet isn't sufficient enough to pass a bicyclist. When it is a double yellow line, it's law that you have to give 4 feet. Around the country, the accepted law for many states is 3 feet passing. So you'll notice that in a lot of references and in language will say a recommended of 3 feet is recommended when passing a bicyclist. North Carolina law, it is 2 feet. If there's an accident, then that's something that's going to be hard to prove. But when overtaking a vehicle, the language is, though, if you cannot safely pass a bicyclist with 2 feet of space, then you have to provide more than 2 feet of space. And that's what's going to be proven, or try to be proven in the event of a collision. It would be from where you could actually contact the bicyclist. So say, for instance, and that's a great point because that leads us into thinking about some trucks, delivery trucks and just, larger trucks on the road have these side mirrors that stick out and put them in closer proximity to a bicyclist. And so you can't think of 2 feet from the actual door of the vehicle. You have to think of 2 feet from the furthest thing that's extending from my vehicle when I pass somebody. Yes, so, and that's why we create this picture to make it to where there is some conflict here of just trying to, at the end of the day, it's going to have to be proven how close in proximity that car is to that person. But technically, when you're just looking from here, if you think of just 2 feet, they're giving that 2 feet clearance. And if there is a collision, then it would have to be taken into account of where that collision occurs and what actually was the contact point. Yes, sir. Yeah, I don't know. So that's for the lawyers and the police officers. Yeah, so that's something that, thankfully that we have people on our board that represent, that are lawyers that represent bike law and are fighting hard to figure out what those measurements are and how do you do that, because we shouldn't have to. So again, ideally, if you can't pass safely within 2 feet, you just shouldn't be. And ideally, what's the safest thing is to change lanes to pass. All right, and that's what we want to get across to motorists, is that we really would like for you to just change lanes to pass when it's safe to do so. For what? Bike cameras, yeah. Okay, so here's the not part of it. So again, it's to create that contradicting, I don't know, how close is that person to the bicyclist? What's that? I'm not, that's for someone outside of my expertise to make that decision. But that's where, for me as a motorist, and again, I never forget the fella who was my hero every time I'm driving my car, and because I know the perspective of a bicyclist and a motorist, so I'm going to give more than 2 feet of clearance, most definitely. And so that's all we can take away is here, you got to give more than 2 feet, 4 feet, of course, when there's a double yellow line, but change lanes to pass if you can. Okay, so sharing the road. Check for bicyclists in your blind spots. When you're driving a larger vehicle, again, I just mentioned the mirrors, so allow room for that mirror contact. I've been hit in the head with a truck mirror before, has hit my helmet multiple times. That's happened to me before, and the driver just kept going. Extended wheels, trailers, things like that. You're pulling a trailer. It's hard to judge how far that trailer is from the bicyclist that you just passed. All right, you've got to ensure that you have cleared that bicyclist. Large profile vehicles, wind blast can cause a serious accident for a bicyclist. Okay, so let's get to, okay, so passing a group of bicyclists, also referred to oftentimes as a peloton, a pass when there's, again, only when there's abundant clearance. Again, that more than 3 feet's recommended. Again, change lanes to pass when the situation calls for it. Tap the horn, don't blast the horn. Other situations that can occur, distracted driving. All right, so again, be present, put the phone down. Let's not text and drive. Sun glare and fog are something to take consideration. Sun may be blinding. You can't see a bicyclist in front of you. Slow down your pace. Avoid parking in bike lanes. Children on bikes, again, unpredictable. Speed kills. Okay, so if you are sharing the road, you see that there's bicyclists ahead or pedestrians, slow down. Just slow down to ensure that we can kind of create the best scenario that we can. Illegal courtesy. So oftentimes motorists want to stop when they shouldn't stop just to allow bicyclists to go by. And oftentimes bicyclists do the same thing to be courteous to motorists. It's best that we avoid the courtesies altogether and just obey the traffic laws. All right, so then that way we can ensure that no one gets hit. If a bicyclist waves a motorist on through, but then a collision occurs because of the decision of that bicyclist, they could be held accountable for that. All right, so again, it's just basically safe to just follow the rules of the road. Okay, what we teach bicyclists. Control or take the lane when appropriate. Be visible and predictable. How can they be more visible? Wear bright clothing, lights, front and back. Ride on the right, not against traffic. Stop at all stop signs and lights. Obey the first come, first serve rule. Yield when changing lanes. And choose the correct intersection positioning. Okay, we also teach them to use their hand signals, because again, the more predictable bicyclists can be, the better for everyone. Okay, so you may see these hand signals on a bicyclist. Left, right, stopping, and also right turn as well. Oftentimes bicyclists aren't comfortable taking that right hand off, so they use the traditional right hand turn with the hand up. Key points to take away. Okay, so treat bicyclists as drivers of vehicles. Both road users can take action to avoid bike-car crashes. Pay special attention to intersections and driveways. Understand when and why cyclists take the lane. The safest way to pass a bicyclist is to change lanes. And roadway users are all people. Okay, we're all together. Let's share the road. And let's keep it safe for everyone. Okay, any questions? Yes, sir. Yes. Right, so nighttime riding is something that generally goes more in depth in smart cycling classes for the bicyclists. But to give you an idea of what we're teaching bicyclists in those classes is that, yeah, North Carolina law at night, you have to have a front light and a rear light reflector that can be seen from 300 feet away, or in place of the rear, you could have clothing that's bright enough to be seen from 300 feet away. So most definitely, and you want those reflectors on there too, because what if your lights fail? Your lights fail, your lights burn out, you're riding longer than you thought, your lights didn't charge the way that you thought they did. Have those reflectors on your bike, leave them on there, so that's a good backup safety measurement for you. But most definitely, so all the same rules apply. You're looking, so as a motorist, you're still looking for those riders at night. And it can be difficult. Oftentimes people aren't wearing bright clothing, they're riding against traffic. Again, all that you can do is be present in the moment, not be distracted, and just looking for those bicyclists, whether coming from opposite direction or in line with traffic. Turn off their lights. Yeah. So bicyclists that have lights on their bike, but they have them turned off. Yeah. Oh, that's awful. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely not. No. So maybe going out on a limb, maybe they're thinking, trying not to blind the bicyclist that's coming, if it's oncoming or whatnot. But no, absolutely, everybody needs to be visible. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Okay, could you just slide out and just repeat that one more time? I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, so she asked about the bike lanes, the contraflow lanes that go against traffic, and why do they exist? Where are they? So I couldn't tell you where some are that exist here. Does anybody or have some in their town, the contraflow lanes? In Charlotte? Yes. Okay. Okay, so there is a contraflow here in Durham as well. So, yeah. Yes. Yes. Awesome. Yeah, so he just mentioned that. So yes, I have ridden those in DC before too. So oftentimes a contraflow lane will be in a lane in a lane where it's too narrow to have all the infrastructure. So they'll create a contraflow lane to be able to safely get that bike traffic through that area of town until they can connect to another one-directional bike lane or just into another part of town or traffic that's safer for the bicyclist. And sometimes they're in the middle of the infrastructure, and oftentimes they're on the side of the infrastructure. But so obviously there's one here in Durham. Yes. Yeah, so the question was when trying to avoid that right hook with a bicyclist, and if there's a bike lane there, and so if they're making that right-hand turn and merging over to make that right-hand turn, oftentimes the motorist goes overlaps into that bike lane, where they've noticed that there's not a bicyclist there to make that right turn. So not saying ride in the bike lane when you're riding on that road going straight, but when you're making that right-hand turn, you're turning into that bike lane, so make sure that the bicyclist, of course, is not there before you make that turn. And as you turn into the bike lane, then there's not going to be a collision there with a bicyclist because you've checked to see that there's not a bicyclist there. So on that right hook, in that particular slide, the bicyclist was going straight. Right, so then at that point in time, making a right turn, the motorist would need to yield to that bicyclist and let them go ahead and pass before they make that right turn. Yes, sir. Right. So you're talking about, so they're leaving the shared path and going into a pedestrian crossing. Right, so in the state of North Carolina, a bicyclist can enter a pedestrian crossing as well, and they don't have to dismount from their bike. It's a legal move, right? Had stopped. Right. So he's asking if a bicyclist coming off of a shared use path has stopped, obeyed the stop signs, and then proceeded across the intersection in a pedestrian crossway, but then is impacted by a vehicle, are they protected by the fact that they're in a pedestrian walk? So again, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a police officer, but I would say that yes, that they would be protected in that crosswalk because that is a shared use path, especially when the crosswalk extends from a shared use path. It's anticipating that there are bicyclists, people in wheelchairs, scooters, strollers, joggers, all are using that area. Stephen, did you have a question? Yeah. Thank you. Uh-huh. No. You'll have to. Will you elaborate on that? Okay. Sure. Of course. Absolutely. Okay. Mhm. Mhm. So are there any what? S Right. So your question is, what are the efforts that are in place right now to help combat those situations? Yeah. So, I mean, what we're doing right now, so of course education is first and foremost. The more that we can educate motorists and bicyclists alike about what's going on and what's not okay, that's going to help. But as far as our internal efforts and Terry, you may need to, if there's something that internally with BikeWalkNC that we're doing specifically, especially in regards to the recent situation in Texas with the roll calling, is there possibly anything that you could expand on that?
Sure. As in regards to the question about reporting and managing dangerous drivers, that's really done at the local level. You see municipalities have a dangerous driver reporting number, usually at a 311 for the local municipalities. Charlotte had one for many years, but it's gone into lapse. We're trying to restart that in that community, but other communities do have, at the local level, they're reporting the dangerous driver. The DEQ, in regards to the coal rolling comment that you made, does have a smoking and choking hotline to report vehicles that do that at the state level. There is also a third option to report dangerous drivers on the road, and that can go by the star HP on your cell phone. That is an important one, especially if you recognize as a cyclist or pedestrian you are on a state road. The response rate at that level is significantly different than many local municipalities' response rates, in that it goes directly to a law enforcement agent rather than to a community service or a civic interface before it gets to reporting to a law enforcement agent. But again, at any time, I think for the Bicycle Friendly Driver Program, at any time, the first response to any dangerous driver or any issue on the road regarding to bicycle or pedestrian safety is to call 911 and to have a specific report made as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks for elaborating on that. Awesome. Any more questions? Yes, sir. So again, just going back to, and I know Stephen has a great point we mentioned earlier, ultimately the fix to all of this is when we start creating better infrastructure in all of our cities. But right now, until that exists, we have to play our part as motorists. And so, again, that's why I shared the personal story and interaction I had, because I think of it every time I get into a car, I've got to be the hero today. And what does that mean? That just means I need to be present while I'm driving. I can't be distracted. I can't be thinking about the meeting that I'm about to go to or what just happened earlier in the day, or I just need to be mindful. And so as motorists, we have to do our part to be mindful and aware of what's going on around us. And sometimes, again, we say cyclists may be doing an illegal maneuver. They may be riding against traffic. Oftentimes people don't know. They don't know that you can't ride against traffic. Not everyone has been afforded the same information that we have. And so the more that we get that information out there, the safer it'll be for everyone. But until that point, when we get behind, the wheel of a vehicle, I think that we just have to, again, just think about how can I be the hero today? And that just means I need to be present, be focused, and do these extra things that we kind of discussed about that we can do, that we can look for when there's bicyclists and pedestrians on the road, the mistakes that may be made. In the same token, we're educating bicyclists as well. These are the legal ways to ride and share the road. Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for asking. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, awesome. Yay. Civil engineering students from NC State. I think just the fact that you showed up to be educated about this is huge. We'd love to see, especially more and more younger folks showing up to our summits and being part of the conversation. And especially going to the career field that you're going into, is be thinking when you sit down and start looking at whether you're dealing with MPOs, RPOs, and you're looking at road designs, are we really looking at designs that accommodate all road users? Okay, so not just transit vehicles, automobiles, but are we looking at bicyclists? Are we looking at ADA compliances? And just to go forward and bring that to the table in situations where perhaps other people aren't thinking about it. Not all engineers ride bikes, but when I've had the privilege of sitting at a table with an engineer that rides a bike, I've always noticed they bring this awareness to the conversation that wouldn't have existed if they didn't. And so oftentimes, if you're in a conversation and you're looking at road design and there isn't a representation of a certain community there, ask to have a representation there so that you have a voice and can hear everyone's experience on those roads that you're looking at and that you're designing for. Does that help? Yeah. Thank you for being here. All right. Anybody else? Well, if given time and to respect everyone's time, there's a quiz. If you'd like to take the quiz to become Bicycle Friendly Driver certified, I will hand those out to you here if you're in person. If you're watching virtually, that quiz link will be offered to you in the Q&A box. All right, and I've given the thumbs up that it's there. So if you're taking the quiz virtually, make sure you answer the question that asks for your email so that I can send you your certificate by email. And otherwise, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening in, those that are at home. And we'll get right into the test and move forward from there. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.
At HDR, we're passionate about making North Carolina a better place to walk and roll. Our Salem Parkway project in Winston-Salem upgraded a downtown greenway, integrated a bike and pedestrian tunnel into a highway reconstruction project, and delivered 2 signature bridges. From planning to construction, we're ready to help you imagine, design, and deliver the next generation of bicycle and pedestrian projects for our communities.
Hi, I'm Lisa Regal with AARP North Carolina. We enjoy working with BikeWalkNC as we work to make our active transportation safer through efforts like the Bicycle Safety Quiz, Vision Zero, and Complete Streets.